Good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. Streaming to you from the East Coast to the left coast and around the world on UCY.tv. This is All Things Apocalyptic with your host, G. Michael Hopf. So, how is everybody doing out there tonight? Hope you're doing well. I've had a great week. I hope you guys have. I don't know if there won't be a lot of drinking on tonight's show. Last week's was definitely kind of fun with John Vance. You know, having somebody kind of live sitting next to you, and the show was a lot of fun. So, but I have another great guest on tonight, and I'll be getting to her shortly. I'm not even going to dive into any kind of the news tonight. I think we all kind of know just what's going on out there for the most part. If anything, I know that the people that listen to my show and the people that kind of tune into UCY.tv are pretty much in tune to what's happening around the world. So there's really not much for me to say to kind of educate you on kind of the latest and greatest of what's happening. Because I mean, I can talk about Ebola again for like the upteenth time, and that is just kind of boring. So what I did want to share with some people, in my own personal life, there's been some very, very exciting stuff that's happened. On If anyone who's fans of my book series would probably like to know that there is some cool stuff happening as far as seeing the books translated and adapted to the screen. So I'm very, very excited to announce that. Well, actually, I asked the question: who has ever seen the TV show, the post-apocalyptic TV show Jericho? If anyone ever has, I'm actually kind of thrilled to have the co-creator of that, Josh Scher. He's also a writer. He was also a writer, or is a writer, on the TNT post-apocalyptic show The Last Ship, as well as he's done several other TV shows. He has expressed interest in partnering with me in adapting The End, book one in the New World series, for television. So I'm meeting with him in Los Angeles in December. We're going to sit down. I don't know how the deal looks and where it's going, but that's pretty exciting for a writer, for any author. I think, I'll just speak for myself. It's just always been kind of a dream of mine just to write the books and then have them go out into the world and where they've seen some success, and then turn around and see that success possibly turned into something on the screen is really, really exciting. So as things progress with those talks, I'll keep everybody informed. But the process always takes forever. I've been working with an agent in Los Angeles for a while as far as adapting the series to a movie, and things just move incredibly slow. Even if I were to get an option just for a movie specifically, that option never translates into production, never translates into ever seeing it actually happen. So the meeting I'll have with Josh in LA in December will be kind of the first of many, many meetings, and the beginning of probably will be a very, very long process. So I'm very excited. So I really wanted to share that with everybody that's out there. Things are, again, those fans of the series, hopefully one day, at least it's actually, I'm determined to see my books translated and adapted to screen. That's something I've always been pushing and been very, very aggressive about. So one way or another, whether it's with Josh or whether it's the agent or somebody else who I haven't met yet, that will happen one day. So that's kind of what's happening with me with me. And tonight, like most other times, I have a great author on. She is the author of the McClane Apocalypse, a great kind of trilogy of apocalyptic books out there. And I'll just won't even kind of dive too much into it. I'll have her kind of introduce herself. Kate Morris is with us tonight. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
No, and by the way, guys, we're having some technical difficulties. So if kind of Kate goes in and out, you'll just please forgive us on our end. So Kate, why don't you kind of introduce yourself to the listeners out there, who you are and what your book series is?
Sure. I wrote the trilogy, the McClane Apocalypse. It's a little bit different than your usual post-apocalyptic thread. Um, it doesn't really dive a lot into the political maelstrom that causes the apocalypse in the first place, because we all know the government's going to do that. So I didn't feel like I needed to dwell on that. It focuses more on this one particular family, which is the McClane family, and it's very character driven. There's action sequences, but the characters are what drive the story forward. So, yep, it's doing pretty well. And the third book just came out, I think, 2 weeks ago, I believe. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, it's an Amazon bestseller, correct? Or the series is, correct?
Yes, it's doing very well. Not as well as getting optioned for a TV deal. Congratulations, by the way.
There's no option yet. That's just this. These are just talks. Options.
Big.
There's money on the table. Then there's no money on the table. There's just conversations. Um, one thing that I've had some great conversations with some other women authors, specifically in the apocalyptic genre and dystopian genre. And I think it's when I first wrote my books, there didn't seem to be a lot of female voices out there, and there definitely is today. So that's why I was excited to get you on, because I think women can write the apocalypse with a little bit of a different perspective. And at the same time, what I've noticed in like the demographic of my books, surprisingly, it's evenly split. Which would surprise me. It's about 50-50 as far as male versus female who follow my series. So there's definitely a lot of women out there that like the genre and read the genre and follow it and so forth. So I think it's great that women are really kind of getting into this space and then adding their specific voice to it. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, I think so too. And I was surprised in just the opposite way that I had so much male readership. I didn't think for a second that any guy was going to pick up a book with a chick on the front that said the apocalypse. I figured they would be like, chick flick, and nobody would read it. But I think I have a bigger fan base of men than women.
Well, I know I put the cover of your first book on on some social media sites that I have, and a lot of the men were commenting on it. So I think you did your coverage correctly.
It's
That might have been, because us men were very simple creatures. That might have been the issue,
yeah,
but you definitely got them. And of course, what it is, I think you drew them in, and then your writing kind of captured them, and then that's why you've held them, because you write your stories, you write your characters so well.
a chick with a gun on the cover never hurts. And then once they realize, wait a minute, this writer actually knows about guns, it kind of turns to my favor, I think. And it's very pro-military. I get tired of the military being portrayed in a bad way, and in my books, the Rangers are the good guys, and that's the way I think they.
Are you there? I think we lost you for a second.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, I like in
Can you
your
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. I like in your and on the Amazon product page for the first book and the book description where you describe it as the three sexy army rangers. I had a chuckle at that. I think that's definitely an appeal to your female readers. Kate, are you there? All right, I think here's the technical difficulty I think we're having. Yeah, it says there's a problem with the call. She mentioned earlier that there was the weather where she is might be causing some issues. So that's where we are right now. So hey, I'm not sure on the chat room. Anybody out there? Have you guys read her books yet? Anybody out there? Because they're really good, and I definitely highly suggest it. And she is just amazing how quickly she can put out books. Looking at if you jump on and look at the Amazon product page, and I'll go and throw the link up. She came out with her first book on April the 10th, and she's already got her third book out. So, oh, Kate, are you there?
Yep, I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I was just kind of just,
Sorry, I live in the boonies.
no, that's fine. That's quite all right. I was just kind of just commenting on how you are a prolific writer and you put out material quickly.
Not really. All three books were written at the same time. And actually, I wrote it all nonstop. And then when I got to 1,200 pages, I was like, oh, wait, I don't think anybody wants to read this on parchment paper, so I better start putting this in order. So I ended up breaking it into three books.
Okay, so since you've already had this written, have you been writing something else in between?
I'm actually working on a different genre right now, another book. It's a thriller, and then I'm continuing the series of the McClane family as well. So yeah, I'm a busy beaver.
No, that's good. Is this all you do right now? Or, I mean, your success with these books, is it translated into you writing for the most part full time?
Yes, I write full time and I homeschool my kids. So that's the other full time job I have.
Yeah, that definitely is a full time job. Well, just being a mother is a full time job.
And that's right. Somebody has to lay down the law around here.
Um, Let me ask you. So, in your series, the apocalypse kind of comes on slowly. There's not like in some other books where there's like a nuclear event or an EMP or there's some pandemic that breaks out and like 2 weeks later everyone's dead. It's kind of like the slow burn where eventually the society and the economy collapses. Did you write that because that's what your own particular vision is for where we're going as a nation?
Yeah, I what happens in the McLean apocalypse is in book one, Korea, North Korea, and Iran, the countries that we don't want having nuclear power have nuclear power, and they start utilizing it. And we try to pull back, we stay away, we stay out of it, and eventually it affects us, and things escalate pretty quickly from there. And some people say that I wrote the collapse too quickly, that our country wouldn't fall apart that quickly, but in my opinion, I think it would. It wouldn't take a long time before lawlessness set in.
Yeah, from like a specific event. Now, I think once you kind of have something, yeah, yeah, personally, I think that it wouldn't take long for people to go crazy.
Right, because there's going to be people out there that are waiting for something like that to happen. There's going to be the takers and there's going to be the survivors. And that's kind of how I wrote the series.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that I think the takers may not represent, as far as the opportunists that will create a lot of the violence to as far as to secure something or to take over. I don't think that they're a large like. I think they're kind of a large minority of people. I think a majority, this is my own opinion, I think a majority of the violence will come from just average, average citizens that are unprepared, and then what happens is once they realize that no one's coming to help them, panic sets in, and then panic will soon turns to violence because they're just trying to stay alive.
Right. I think the people that live in big cities are going to be the one, they're going to have the hardest time because they've always figured, well, the government will come door to door and they're going to give us a care package. Well, it isn't going to happen like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, without a doubt.
Well, people like everybody that I live by, I live in the hill country of Ohio, so yeah, everybody around me is like that. We've still got the kids that take, the full first week of November deer season off and ditch school to hunt. So, it's a little different than living in downtown Detroit.
In fact, does anybody even live in downtown Detroit anymore?
I don't think so. It's mostly empty buildings.
No, I know. Without a doubt, the urban centers would be hit the worst. I was having this thought the other day. I went out for a long hike, and I was thinking about where you live, for instance. Do you feel that how long do you think you'll be safe if in a total collapse, post grid? how long do you think people in the country would remain safe?
Um, where I live, I'd be safe forever because I have a pretty remote place and we live very far back from the road. So, and our house kind of sits up high and we have a good fighting position. We could just snipe people right out the front window. I'm saying that because we may or may not have shot a few groundhogs out the front window. But yeah, I think honestly, I think within hours, if people realize help isn't coming, I think within hours things could fall apart.
I guess where I'm steering this because I wasn't a biggest fan of zombie like The Walking Dead years ago, and then I just got recently turned on to it about a year and a half ago, and then I've just and The Walking Dead is I think a very very well produced, well written show. What struck me when I was on this hike the other day was I was catching up on season 3 or 4 because the new season just came out, and you have these. By the way, have you ever watched the show before, or do you watch it?
Yes. Yes, I'm the same as you. I just started watching it. I originally watched the very first show and I was like, nah, that's scary. And I turned it off because I'm kind of a wimp. And then my family was like, oh, you got to watch this show. It's great. And so I started watching it again. And the only thing that, I do think that Robert Kirkman, I think, it probably doesn't run real parallel to his actual books, but I get a little frustrated with the bad decision making. I don't know. I feel like most people with common sense wouldn't do some of the things they do. So I find myself saying, why would you do this? Why isn't your area secure? Why do you have no plan?
Yeah, what I think sometimes, and I know as a fiction writer myself, sometimes I personally put my characters or have them make sometimes a dumb decision. That way, then there can be conflict or something can occur that creates chaos or there's a problem then to solve once that there once the action is taken and there's the consequence of that poor decision. But anyway, going back, was thing is you have these hordes of zombies. Sometimes they're like single zombies or a small group, but sometimes there's like these herds of hundreds, and sometimes they've talked about thousands of zombies are just kind of like migrating over the hillsides and going in. That's what I start to imagine happening. I think within the first few days, people in the urban centers start to panic. But what happens to those millions? We're talking tens of millions and in fact, if you even look at how many people populate all the urban centers across the United States, probably over 100 million people, where do they go then? They start to herd themselves out. You start to have mass migrations of people out of the cities to where?
Right, exactly. And I think that's when you're going to run into your problems. People that live in the cities that can't be self-sustainable are going to move out towards the people like farmers and where I live, I'm in the heart of the fracking district here in Ohio, and everything around me is farms or an oil well. So I've thought about that too. Yeah, people, I don't know, learn how to do a lot of reloading. That's all I can
Yeah,
suggest.
because I think that there's a sense of security that you have, and I would absolutely have that same sense, but I start to imagine that's where people are going to want because they're going to imagine, oh, I can go out and there's resources out there, whether it's on someone's farm, whether it's a creek or river, they can go fishing somewhere, maybe possibly go hunting. I think a lot of the natural resources will start to be picked apart. Wildlife will start to be hunted out, and I think that people that like yourself could find yourself in a bad situation where you could have thousands of people heading your way.
Yeah, I'm more afraid of the zombies in Congress. I don't know. Moving through the halls of Congress, not so much walking down my street.
But let me ask you: do you think? I think it's the actions of our government that will lead to a downfall. But isn't it how we as the general population react to that event that is truly the determination of whether there's an apocalyptic type scenario?
Well, it depends on what the apocalypse, what it would be. If it would be an EMP or a nuclear, you wouldn't have any control over something like that. If it's just a demise, a slow demise of society, like I personally see every day, yeah, I mean, you're either going to have another revolution where people get sick of it and they say that's enough. We're taking back our country. We're going to go back to the grassroots of what our founding fathers tried to found this country on, or, we're going to let them just totally tear apart our Constitution and everything that they fought for.
So your vision is kind of how you have it painted in the book, where eventually things just deteriorate and things just collapse. The nation, or the wealth of the nation that we had, has probably been fleeced away, and the rest of us are just left kind of fending for ourselves.
Well, I think if you don't have strong leadership and everybody's worried about being PC, you're eventually going to PC yourself to death. I mean, there's solutions to the problems that we have now, but they won't take those solutions because they're afraid. We send the media, we send CNN into a war zone with our guys, and then we're like, yeah, don't shoot unless somebody shoots at you. And if you think somebody's going to shoot at you, you better make sure you vet that before you actually take that shot, because CNN's got you on live TV, and you can't fight wars like we fight. Everybody's worried about hurting feelings, and let's rebuild the city we just blew up. I don't get it anymore. I think that our government, I think it's a mess.
Well, what in a perfect world, or in a perfect scenario, if you could change what you see happening, what would be one of the first three actions you would take?
First, I would deal with Iran, because I don't think that people like Iran and North Korea should have nuclear capabilities, because they one of these days they're going to dumb luck get themselves an actual something that goes off further than 40 feet above the ground, and then you're going to have problems. Then you would have World War III. And I think as long as you have countries like Russia selling them secrets and arms, you're always going to have problems. We don't have strong leadership in our country. We say, oh, we're going to do sanctions, and oh, we got to be politically correct and shake their hand. And I think that's a bunch of baloney. I think our forefathers are laughing at us saying, are you serious? This isn't what we fought the English for. What are you people doing?
Do you think that we should have some kind of because right now I think a lot of people in the country are kind of wary of war and conflict overseas. Would Do you think that we should be more involved, like militarily, with what's happening in the Middle East, or should we be practicing more disengagement?
I think we should be more involved, but I think we should be involved the right way. I don't believe in rules of engagement. If you're going to send ground troops in, and you're going to send some sniper like Chris Kyle, and you're going to, God rest his soul. But if you're going to send somebody like that in, you're going to say, go snipe these people. You can't say, oh, don't shoot her because you might have something under America. I don't know. It's just a mess. I don't think we should fight wars if you're not going to fight the war.
Yeah, I'm a vet myself, and I would agree with that. If you're going to commit resources, treasure, and people to because essentially, what is war? War is essentially, the definition of war is essentially the last form of diplomacy. You want to get your way, and the only way you're going to do it is you're going to beat the other guy over their head. And the most
Right.
effective way to do it is to go in there and crush your enemy, cut his head off, put it on a spike, and own the place. If you're not going to
Right.
fight warfare like that, then don't go to war.
General Patton said, no dumb bastard ever fought a war, never won a war by getting himself killed. He made the other dumb bastard kill himself. So that's the way people should be thinking in our country. Instead, you've got bleeding heart whiners and, CNN's covering, oh, don't shoot, there could be children and women. Don't be a village where there's, ISIS is hanging out, because you know what's coming.
Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, no, I think you cut out there for a second. So all right, so then I think that's phase one as far as in foreign entanglements. What if you were the president, or well, let's just say this: what if Kate Morris was the dictator for a year, and you can implement anything you wanted? I think we got number one. What would be the other two things? What would you do domestically?
Domestically, for sure, close the border. Good grief. Get it done already. It's not that hard.
No, I agree. No,
That's a big political
it's on
game.
purpose. Yeah, and it's done to
Yeah, it's a
transform the
game.
nation.
No, they don't see those people as immigrants. Can you hear me?
No, I think I lost you there for a second again. So yeah, you mentioned close the border.
Right. Close the border. That's just a political game. We all know it. Nobody wants to really do anything about it because they don't see them as immigrants. They see them as voters. That's all they see them as.
Well, I think both political parties don't want to close the border. There's the Republicans are always been fun to bash Obama and the Democrats over the head about the border, but I think the border's pretty wide open under Bush's reign as well, and it's been that way for a very, very long time. So I think those Republicans that have business interests want cheap labor, and then the Democrats have other visions of voters, and then therefore they can turn certain red states blue. I think both parties, nothing gets done because both parties want the status quo.
Yep, I agree. For sure. If they really wanted to do something, they could do it. We're the greatest nation on earth. I mean, give me a break. Look at the things that we've built. You can't build a wall. You can't put a guy from the National Guard on it. We could do anything that we need to do, and we don't need anybody else's permission in the world to do it. We don't do things because our hands are tied by big business.
Oh no, a big business, big union, big interest period. And the thing is that both parties have them. Both parties, they call them, I think they call it back in DC, they call it the K Street influence. Essentially, those where all the lobbyists are hanging out. But it is funny that whenever you get one party in office, specifically the executive office, then the other one is saying all the ills of the world because of them, and then literally you can have the exact same thing happening when the other party's in, and it's the exact same argument. Nothing ever changes because they both actually want it to stay the same.
Exactly.
Okay, so now dictator Moore says close the borders. What's the final thing you would do?
Term limits.
You and I think a lot alike. Absolutely. Actually,
Yeah.
I've come to the thought of making the president just a one-termer instead of have give him two.
Well, I think definitely the military experience is important too. We have presidents that have absolutely zero military. You don't know how to run it. It's like saying, "Here, I'm going to write a book, but I didn't actually take grammar in school or or I'm going to this company. I'm going to be, the CEO of Walmart, but I've never had a job." If you don't understand something, how can you possibly run it or respect something?
Yeah, it's that is kind of been the age-old. I think that's been an argument that's been or a debate that's been happening, in the Republic for a long time. Should the commander in chief actually have military experience, specific because that is one of his constitutional responsibilities is to oversee the military and and our defenses and protection. So you would have the Constitution changed to make one of the requirements for the president be prior military service.
Absolutely. I think that when our forefathers came up with the Constitution, they made two mistakes, and that's it. There's only two mistakes in it, and that's term limits and military experience for the president. Other than that, I think they did a good job, and people should stop messing with it or trying to mess with it.
Yeah, I always like the argument that it's a living document. I,
Yeah,
I
right.
don't believe in that. I don't believe that it's a living document. I think that's used by people that want to continuously reform it, change it, and with the intent on eventually getting rid of it.
Oh, right. Exactly. And then if you disagree with them, they call you a racist. I get called a racist a lot. I'm very pro Second Amendment. I always have been. I'm a member of the NRA, and I've been around guns my whole life. I was my dad's trap shooting partner all through school. which also probably meant why I didn't have very many boyfriends. But yeah, I've been called a I get called a racist all the time over on Twitter because I'll say something pro Second Amendment and then they'll try to argue with me, but it's like, step off, buddy. I've been arguing this since I was in the seventh grade.
Yeah, it's that's always fascinated me is how can a belief in having each individual, regardless of race, creed, gender, the ability to have a tool to defend themselves, how does that translate into racism is beyond me. And who would not want more rights? Who would want less? I've never. I think there's a I can't remember his name right now, but he has this view that there are either people that are pro-gun or they're scared of guns.
I think that's what it is too, sure. And then in the meantime, they've got bodyguards.
Well, those are just the elite that wish to shove
Yeah.
their what they want on us, but they never plan on living under those same rules.
Well, absolutely. Well, I think politicians don't want people that don't want people to have guns because they know that they can't ever control us.
No, absolutely. Eventually, and I think that's yeah, it really puts them in quite a bind. So, I want to ask you a question. As far as you have a very healthy skepticism and cynicism about government. I think I have that. I think a lot of people that are listening to the show have the same thing. I think it's what our founders wanted. We should never trust government. We should never trust people in power. And I think that goes as far. We should never trust people in power of these huge conglomerations and corporations that exist at the same time. Because all they ever want to do, these institutions, is constantly grow and grow and grow, kind of like a cancer or like a disease. Um, do you see some kind? I mean, obviously you see a downfall. Do you see an armed revolution or a civil war breaking out from that?
I think if they ever try to actually take people's guns, like go house to house, yeah, they'll have a party on their hands that they did not anticipate.
Yeah, absolutely. I do you think that. See, I
I hope not. I
no,
mean, I like our country. I'm one of those crazy nut job I love America type people. So I hope our country doesn't ever fall apart. I want my kids to have the same opportunities that I've had in my life. I want their lives to be even better and more enriched by the government staying out of their lives. That's the problem, is when the government gets into your business. We're doing fine. We don't need your help. We have a set of rules that was established for us. We don't need them to keep changing it or trying to.
Yeah, and well, I think our system's been kind of turned on its head, where the federal government, the central government, has more power than the states do, and I think it should be reversed. I think the greatest powers or the greatest governmental influence should be our local governments because those are actually ones we can truly participate in, and then it goes down from there, and the central government is the weakest.
Right. The federal government was never established to have all the authority that they do. And when you hear people, I don't know if you heard what the actress Gwyneth Paltrow said the other day. I don't know if you kept up on what she said, but it's been all over the news. She said she held a fundraiser for Obama at her house, and she said, I think we need to give this man all the power and authority he needs to pass anything he wants to pass. It's like, wait a minute, I don't think you actually understand what you're asking for because that's a dictatorship. And my forefathers and my ancestors bled on this ground to ensure that that never happened to us again. But I don't know, people are stupid.
Well, yeah, I know I did hear that asinine comment from her entitled mouth, and
Don't let her be in your TV series. You're fired.
the what's interesting, that's why I actually do see eventually a civil war breaking out, only because the sides are so hardened now, and there's like this even split of people on the leftish or the people on the rightish, and we live essentially in two different countries. And where you have see that comment is indicative of the fact that she's uneducated or just blatantly doesn't care about forcing her views on the other side by having a dictator. She could care less about the system of the republic that's been the rule of law that was established long ago, and has no problem giving all the power to the person she wants so that they can force their will on the other side. And that's where I think we're getting now. I think, and I think you can see that sometimes on the right, where the right just says, screw these guys. Let's just do what we want. And we're disrespecting the other person's opinion, and we just want to force our will on someone else. And eventually, I think that leads to conflict.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I think that there's people, I'm a Tea Party conservative. I'm sure you could figure that one out. So I fully expect my audit to come any day now. But I think that there's people like us that aren't going to stand by and let the country fall apart. I'm not going to let it fall apart. I'm going to do everything I can. We were given the vote to enact a peaceful revolution every 2 and 4 years. But if that fails us, which it seems like it sure is, seems like voter fraud and all that just seems to be running rampant, and it's going to get worse and worse, then you're going to be looking at an armed insurrection, I think.
And that's that. I have that. I have those same visions as well. I see things going, and that's the last thing I want to see. Um, and it's only because, and I've talked to other people about it, and I like to temper people's. I think it's an initial reaction to say, let's just go fight and get the fight on. Let's just do it. But it's always comes from, there's an expectation that we think we'll win, but we may not. And civil wars historically are always more violent, more bloody, and there are atrocities committed greater than if we were just fighting a completely different force.
Right. I agree with you. Um, I don't I don't think our military would turn against us. There's a lot of talk about, the military is going to turn against the people. I have a lot of military friends, and I don't think they're going to turn against us. And I would sure hope not. And it's unconstitutional to even think something like that.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. I just spent part of the weekend up at Camp Pendleton going on a memorial hump with a bunch of former Marines, guys I hadn't served with. But there was the First Marine Regiment essentially got together, and we were kind of there to kind of think about the guys we've lost, the past wars, and as well as just kind of get together. And yeah, all of us kind of think pretty much the same way. And I just don't. I can't speak for, say, the Air Force because it's kind of a corporation, but that's just a jab, guys. Okay, I like the Air Force.
My brother-in-law was in the Air Force. He passed away, but let me tell you, he was the best shot I ever knew. And I remember him and my dad talking like this, and there was no way that I just don't think the military. There's going to be some. There's going to be some that follow. But I think for the most part, people are going to say, yeah, I don't think so. This is still my country, too.
No, I know. I agree with you too. I've always had that comment when people say, "Well, they're going to turn the military on us," and I was like, I don't see that. From the fact that I've served, again, I think there could be a percentage, but I think that those men and women that go in, for the most part, are going in. Well, there's several different reasons people go in, but there is a love of country. There's a love of what they view the country to be. And they're serving in very harsh conditions with the chance of being killed, and they're not paid. They're paid shit, to be honest. And
Right.
to think that they'll now just turn around and go against the families that they've sworn to protect, I don't see it either. I think our military are going to be the greatest of the oath keepers that are out there.
I think so, too. I think the people you'd see turn against you are the people that the government's given these military vehicles to. You might get some goofy small town cops. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not a hack against cops. I like cops. I wouldn't be a cop for $1 million a year because I don't like dealing with the dredges of society. But I think that you'd get some small towny types but that wouldn't last long.
Yeah, it would be. That's why sometimes I think that things haven't happened, and that's why they might be wanting to they want to almost like control us by having certain events occur. Well, where the people, the majority, will essentially give their rights away.
Right. And there's going to be people that will do that, but then there's going to be people like me that doesn't.
And then here we go. Yeah, and then we're back at the standing up and possibly fighting. What's your take on this? Because right now the Ebola thing just keeps evolving nonstop, and it's gone actually a little bit further than I thought it actually would. Um, but where do you see kind of this Ebola outbreak that's happening right now in the United States? Where do you think it's going, and do you think that our government will eventually put in a travel ban?
Well, first, let me just preface this by saying I do not think there is enough hand sanitizer in the world. I'm a little bit of a germaphobe. So now I don't know. See again, they're trying to be politically correct. Oh my gosh, don't let people from Africa. Seriously? I mean, that's kind of where it's coming from.
No, I agree. I that entire thing is it's crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy that they're still allowing people from those Western African countries here inside the United States. It's crazy. So
Well, they're using a little fever scanner thing. It's like, what is
that's
that? What's that going to
that's
do? It keeps you dormant in your body for a week before you even know it's there. So how would you scan for a fever?
no,
And then you've got all these flight attendants and pilots and all these people. I don't know. It could go like the bird flu. I just hope it doesn't go like that here in the
no.
United States. But Obamacare will probably cure all of that.
So um, now they're PC type, and I think I think they're being a little bit more nefarious about allowing people in. Do you think it's just purely politics and political correctness, or do you think that there's an agenda playing out right now with allowing people to come into this country that could possibly have Ebola?
Well, if you're going to say there's an agenda, you'd have to say there's an agenda to kill people, because it's not really a survivable thing. They've got that, what is it, E10 or something like that. But that didn't even work on that guy in Dallas. I think they used that medication on him, and it didn't work. I don't know. It could go rampant like the bird flu. Now, the bird flu didn't affect America as bad as it did China, but it could. If we're going to just keep letting people over here and letting people over here, it's like just open the door. And that's not the only thing that's going on. I mean, there's TB running rampant. It's crazy. And then that upper respiratory sickness,
The
kids are getting
enterovirus?
paralyzed. Yeah, kids are getting paralyzed from it, like polio.
Well, and the enterovirus is, I think, a form of it's a form of a rhinovirus. And I was some of the research I was doing, and anyone that's medically, I don't have any medical credentials, so I could be completely talking, out of my rear end here. But some of the reading I was doing on is that polio is in itself part of that family. So that's why this enterovirus 68 is having polio-like symptoms because they're part of the same family of diseases.
And I think that we kind of wiped polio out. So how come that's back in our country?
I think we know why.
Yeah,
Again,
I think we
again,
know why.
again. Do you think it's
Back
just
to see if
political correctness, or do you think that does Kate Morris think there's an agenda at play?
I don't know. I would sure hope not. I like to have a little bit of faith in my government. It's waning, but I'd like to have a little bit of faith that they know what they're doing. I've had faith in the CDC, but I don't know about that anymore.
Well, because it can only be two things: either they're just incompetent, or it's deliberate,
Well, the only reason it would be deliberate is to kill people. I don't know why they would do that, but
or to cause
I've been wrong
chaos.
before. Yeah.
Uh, you know,
Well, it's a good distraction while our president goes and gets his golf on. Less people were complaining about it this week.
yeah, I think he's what is on round 200. I think he's over 200 now.
Yeah, his legacy is going to be the great apologist who increased his golf score.
Yeah, I wonder what his handicap is.
I don't know. He should be pretty darn good by now. I mean, like he could just leave and go to the majors when he retires from being the president,
Well, I
in case
heard that.
that gig runs cold.
Yeah, well, I heard he actually he's expressed a desire to go to work as a commentator for ESPN.
Oh my.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
He's great when he's reading his teleprompter, but boy, I don't know. He's different than Bush because Bush was horrible at reading his teleprompter, and but he was a good speaker when they just let him talk.
Yeah, he could.
And then
Yeah, he
Obama is a horrible speaker. He can't think laterally, and then if they put the teleprompter in front of him, it's like, wow, he's a great orator.
Yeah, I mean, and again, well, I was hanging with a gentleman a few weeks ago, and Obama, without a doubt, is probably one of the laziest executives there ever has been. And again, my presidential history only as far as I mean, I've read about a lot of the presidents, but I've only known Carter on up. And Obama just seems to be literally one of the laziest presidents there's ever been. He just seems extremely disinterested. He seems bored with what he's doing. And again, and some of these mistakes that are happening, these colossal mistakes, like the rollout of Obamacare, just a pure example of just how incompetent bureaucracy is, and just that been handled by a private entity. How that website could have been designed for a fraction of the cost of what the taxpayers had to pay for that thing. But it's either he's and again I always think things always boil down. I always boil things down. Either someone is incompetent or they're doing things deliberately.
Well, I think everything he's doing is deliberate. I think he's just hitting a stride. I think people that are underestimating him by saying, "Oh, he's so stupid." It's like, no, he's not stupid. He knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't. He only goes to what 40% of his security meetings, his
So
briefings. I mean,
yeah,
he. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. He's just hitting a stride. I think in the next 2 years, you're going to see all kinds of interesting things. Well, you know
yeah.
that TV show Scandal. I guess the producer or writer of it, Shonda Rhimes, she had a fundraiser for him, and then a week later she put an anti-gun message on her show. So I figure he's going to go after the Second Amendment before he gets out of office.
Well, good luck with that. I don't think that
Good luck with that.
yeah, I don't think that that's just going to have any play. One, I don't think he'll have the legislature because the Senate's going to turn. I just don't. I mean, unless he tries to implement, executive actions, but I think that'll be challenged. And I, it only be. I mean, the only thing I think I could see him doing successfully would be to do some executive actions, and then I just don't. And that would just be more about creating red meat for the upcoming election in 2016. I think he'll be the lamest of ducks there is, and I think he'll be on the golf course more than he is now.
Yeah. Well, I try to listen to older people. I don't know everything. I don't pretend to, but I like to listen to the older generations talk. And especially, like, I go to gun shows a lot. I know I'm a nerd. And you get to meet a lot of the old veterans, the World War II veterans and the Korean War veterans. And you kind of, if you listen, you learn a lot from those people. They've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And, the things you hear them saying, he's the worst president I've ever seen. I thought Carter was bad. He screwed up the Iran hostage problem. And now look what this guy's done. He can't fight his way out of a brown paper bag. It's incredible that his legacy is a joke.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. We've got about 8 more minutes here, and I don't want to, bore people that are listening with more talks about Obama and how horrible he is, because I think they all already realize that. Let's go back to your book series, and you'd mentioned you've book 3 is out in the McClane Apocalypse. Are you going to continue with the book 4, or are you looking at doing a spin-off of certain characters?
I am going to continue with book 4.
Okay.
It's about 3/4 of the way written. I don't want to give too much away. I have fans that, they're emailing me every day. When is it coming out? I'm like, 2015. That's all I have for you. But yeah, it jumps a little bit into the future, a little bit further into the future than the first three books takes one full year. So from start to finish, the time lapse is a year, and it kind of ends. I could have ended it right where it was, but there's still so much more I felt like I could do with the series. So I thought, well, if I have a good response, then I'll continue it. And people seem to really like the story, so I'm going to continue it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a natural thing. As a writer, again, your fan base is always hungry for more, and I think it's smart to, this is my own take. I will eventually stop my series once I think, I plan on stopping it at 7 books, but I have some spin-offs I'm working on, and but I could be talking to continuing it if the fan base wants it, because I'm writing for them and they're really really interested in, but at the same time I'm only going to write as long as I think that the story will have integrity and be good.
Right. As long as you feel like I just didn't feel like that it was done. I felt like I wasn't done with it yet. Um, and the characters are all young in my book, so not teenagers, not, it's definitely not young adult fiction. So don't let your teenage kids like under 16 or 17 read it. It's a little bit violent. But yeah, I just didn't feel like the story was done yet.
Well, good. Your fans will be happy. So you could be looking out past book 4 then.
I think so, yes.
Good.
I have 3 more in my head, so
Exciting. That's good.
yeah.
Um,
And I like I've always been a big fan of Dean Koontz. I don't know if you've read any of his fiction, but and I also like James Patterson. So I've always had a lot of ideas about writing a thriller. So I'm writing something else at the same time. So
can you share what that is right now?
it's about a serial killer. I
Oh,
have a very dark imagination, apparently.
yeah, a lot of writers do. Actually, I think a lot of people do, because we write a lot of the subject matter that we write about. Look at the apocalypse. It's dark. It's the apocalypse is the future is never always bright and happy. It's always dark and violent. And there's a lot of people that enjoy it. I think we have a lot of company.
I think so too. I think people are worried about what's going to happen with our country and with the whole world. So I think post-apocalyptic fiction is just taken off.
I would agree with that. So this thriller you're working on, this is it'll be a one-off novel.
I'm not sure. I don't know with that one yet. I'm going to test the waters with it. They're either going to love it or they're going to hate it and think I'm a psycho. Say this writer needs to be institutionalized.
Can you give a little bit of the plot besides it's just about a serial killer?
It's about a serial killer, which is in first person, and you get the serial killer's point of view, and then you get the 2 detectives in third person. So,
Interesting.
yeah, I have some strange writing styles. I know a lot of people don't like my series because I wrote it in third work.
I'm sorry, we lost you there. You mentioned about your writing style for the McClane Apocalypse.
Right. I wrote that in third person present tense, which is unusual, and you either love it or hate it. So a lot of people were like, this is weird. But I wrote 25 pages into it, and it just felt wrong. So I went back and I put it in present tense, and that's the way that I saw it. And so that's the way I'm writing it, or
Well,
have been writing it.
and you can't listen to, there's always going to be naysayers or people that are going to complain or people that are going to critique. You've definitely built up a loyal fan base and your books are doing very well. I would just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I have to be authentic to the way that I felt like the story had to be told. So that's unfortunately that's the way it came out, and that's my other book is written completely different. So
No, I just think it's important to just be the writer you're going to be and tell the story. And because I write as well. How well you're doing, you're in the very tip top percent. I mean, so you're doing something right if your books are successful where they are right now. So I would just don't listen to some of those naysayers. Just stick to what you're doing. Again, you've got a faithful and loyal and large fan base that's continuing. And you're going to have them come over to your thrillers book as well, without a doubt.
Well, I hope so. I hope they take to it.
Okay, so we're kind of down to our last minute. Why don't you tell everybody where they can get your books, where they can contact you, your website, Facebook, social media, etc.
Okay, my website is katemorrisauthor.com, and you can find me on Facebook under the McClane Apocalypse.
Great. And so all your books are just exclusively on Amazon right now?
No, they are on Barnes& and Noble, iTunes, quite a few others. I can't even remember.
Oh, you didn't do the KDP Select.
No.
You did not.
No, I didn't know. I wasn't sure about it. My next goal is to get it in actual brick and mortar stores, so I'll be scouting for an agent, I guess.
Well, there are ways of doing that, and you and I can communicate on email. I can tell you how to do that without getting an agent, by the way.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, there's ways of doing things. So, well, Kate, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I love everything we discussed. We talked about your book series is really good. Anyone listening out there, please pick up her books. The McClane Apocalypse. I put a link on the chat room. I'll put some more information on there as well. Again, Kate, thank you very much for coming on, and stay frosty wherever you are.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. All right, guys, that's another show kind of wrapping up. Hopefully, we won't find out when I talk to you next week. Oh yeah, next week's show we're gonna have Joe Nobody on, so tune in and stay frosty.